Hey, okay. So we are finishing up our last little lecture before we conclude this module, and you submit your uh, show and tell film analysis before the end of the week. I swear I have names for it. It's just easier when it's in the syllabus. Um, this is going to be a short slide presentation. Like I don't have a lot of slides to go with it because there's a lot of supplemental stuff that I'm going to want you to watch. But fair warning, we're going back into The Shining, okay? I was kind of like sitting on this when you watched The Shining, and we were just focused on the technical aspects of the making of The Shining, but now I really want to talk a little bit more about like what The Shining means and how it communicated that through various symbols and how to identify themes. And I think that one of the reasons The Shining is so excellent is because besides its many very admirable filmic aspects in terms of the technical stuff. It's got lots of layers of meaning to it. And so this is a good way to sort of talk about like, oh, how do we look at these things and identify them and put labels to them so that you can apply that to other things. So get ready. We're going back to The Shining. Um, what is a theme? Well, remember, the plot's what's happening in the story. Well, there's like the story. The plot's sort of like the structure of how that stuff is organized. And, the screenplay is all about like, okay, how do we want to organize it? What kind of structure do we want to give it, right? Um, but the theme is supposed to be everything that sort of like is under the surface of that plot. So if the plot provides some sort of structure, there should be reason for it, right? It should be um, helping us see certain things or think about certain things or calling certain things to our attention. So, okay, I have this picture here. It's like, yeah, adaptation was about a screenplay on one level, and then on the other level, it was about, the Orchid Thief, right? So there was the plot of the Orchid Thief, and yes, it's about flowers, but was it really about flowers? Do you see? And honestly, that's, compliments to Susan Orlean because she was using flowers, not just to talk about flowers, but she obviously was trying to communicate how her her admiration of this man who cared about flowers, said things about her own needs and also her appreciation for flowers and blah blah blah. Okay, sorry. I'm not trying to analyze that. But the point is like, yes, on the surface, this is a book about flowers, but really underneath the surface, there's something more. So I think thinking about like, okay, the theme, even if you don't know what the movie is specifically trying to say, if you can say, what kind of questions does it want me to ask? You've got the theme there. Now, as far as what the movie's trying to tell you, don't confuse it with the moral. A moral of the story is a little bit more preachy. It's a little bit more like, this story is trying to say that you should never mess with, well, in the case of adaptation, the story is trying to say that one should never mess with, the conventions of Hollywood. You could say Jurassic Park, the moral of the story is humans shouldn't, mess with nature. I think that would be actually sort of fair to say. Um, that would be more of a, a how should a definitive statement. But a theme is a little bit more general. A theme doesn't actually have to direct you to come to any conclusion. It's just trying to help you think about certain things. So okay, and sorry, I've got a dog that's okay. She's very cute, but she snores very loud. Um, Okay, so let's talk about The Shining. What are the themes in The Shining? Uh, maybe some of you have already gone on the internet after you watched The Shining. Maybe some of you were on the internet before you even joined this class. Some of this might sound a little wild to you at the beginning, but this is the gorgeous thing about that film. Once you really start to think about it and you rewatch it, um, I promise some of the things I'm going to say won't seem so crazy. So, in my own words, I think that a theme in The Shining is the trap of recurring violence. I do think The Shining is trying to make us think about how violence works. The evidence for that is a lot of sort of hints about They're the roots of genocide and domestic abuse. I mean, we know that domestic abuse is a prominent thing that shows up in The Shining, both in terms of how Jack treats Wendy and what we know about how he's hurt Danny in the past. There's also some really interesting possibilities that maybe Jack's abuse of Danny was not all just physical. Maybe some of it could have been sexual. And whether or not you agree with that or not is kind of besides the point because it is a theme. It's sort of like it makes us ask and wonder and look for clues. Um, Imperialism, patriarchy, white supremacy. You're like, what? But it was just this dude who saw like a butler ghost in the bathroom. Yes, but the video that you're going to be watching this week will explain some of this a lot better. There's a lot of different clues that you get in terms of um, uh, Native American motifs, and there's some other stuff if you want to watch the documentary about like Nazi typewriters and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, again, even if this is a little far-fetched for you, I do think it's hard to deny that, The Shining is definitely helping explore what happens to Jack in this haunted hotel. But, as we've talked about before, the film wants you to know that Jack kind of came in with all of these existing problems. Jack was a violent person before he entered this hotel. So, regardless of what you think Kubrick is saying about that, I do think that you can safely say that a theme in The Shining is sort of this question about whether or not Jack's problems are supernatural or psychological. Okay. And not it. So, do you get what so it's like, again, it's not telling you what to think. It's really just sort of like, this is something that the film is tackling. That's a theme. Is the nature of evil, right? Is this something supernatural or is it something that's in us all? Is it something that's subconscious? I have a picture of Danny here because I think it's sort of like this theme manifests in his depiction too. He's got Tony, his imaginary friend, that may or may not be a trauma response. Like, is The Shining just something that he has because he's a victim of abuse and so he can sort of see things that other people can't see? Or is there some sort of magical quality to him, right? You don't have to have an answer for it. The theme is just that you can ask those questions. Okay. And I know that was like a long-winded, but it'll say if you'll get more of that in the supplemental video. Now I just want to sort of break down some basics in symbolism to which again, the videos you watch will go into more. So symbolism and theme. So symbols sort of support the theme. Usually they symbols is just like some sort of sign that supports like a general idea. At its most basic root, a symbol could just be like a one-time thing that you see that it represents, maybe something that's happening to the characters or some element of the theme. So a symbol in The Shining would just could be like the maze, for instance. The maze, it represents I'm kind of like I'm BSing you right now, but I'm not. I'm just sort of like thinking on my feet. The maze, it represents how all the characters are trapped in the hotel, or it represents how we can't get out of our own psyche or whatever it is. But it's just okay, the maze symbolizes one thing. A motif, by contrast, is something that keeps coming up. It's often more than once, and it's something that it's sort like it comes up in different scenes to kind of like trigger a response in you. It could be a color, it could be a musical motif, it could be something that every time you hear it, it connotes something or brings up some sort of association in you. The color red or blood, mirrors. There's a lot of mirrors in The Shining. Again, over and over and over again, and doubles, right? The idea that there's sort of like two of everything and the symmetry, which actually does sort of relate to the maze. So maybe that's part of the motif too. Um, and that dualism of, who we are, right? Like the good and the bad. And then an allegory is kind of like next level symbolism because it's like referencing a story within a story. So it's using an existing story to help you make associations within another story. There's a lot of allegories in The Shining. I have down here there's sort of the three wolves allegory that comes out when Jack is like, let me in, and he's like breaking down the doors. A lot of people have written about how um, there's a reference to Hansel and Gretel when Wendy's in the maze and she's like, we should leave breadcrumbs. And of course, sort of like foreshadowing what's to come when Danny's running away from his axe wielding father, which in the same scene has been likened to Jack being a minotaur in Greek mythology. So again, there's lots of different allegories that also sort of it's almost like operating on a mythic subconscious level within us for these great stories that we see recycled over and over again. Filmmakers can kind of use them to symbolically create associations while we're watching. So those are three different sort of types of symbolism that support the larger theme, but the videos that you watch will explain these in even more detail. And I don't know, I don't really give a platform in this class for you to reflect a lot for me, but I am very curious if anybody wants to email me personally about what you think about some of the fan theories, and especially the video that you watch about The Shining, in terms of like what its like main theme is and whether or not you buy it or not, and why or why not. So, yeah, consider dropping me an email or something. Okay, bye.